I work at a property inspection office in Oslo, and last month, this American couple requested a tour of new apartment buildings. They walked into the first unit, knocked on the wall, and the wife turned to me with this look of absolute horror. She said, "Wait, these are solid? Like, actually concrete?" I told her, "Yeah, that's standard construction here." She spent the next 10 minutes tapping every wall in disbelief like she'd discovered some alien technology. Her husband kept muttering, "No wonder everything's so expensive. I had to explain these buildings are designed to last 200 years minimum. Not 30. My cousin lives in Munich and showed me an American house hunting show. There's this family viewing a brand new $450,000 suburban home. It's all excited about granite countertops and walk-in closets. The inspector arrives and literally pushes his hand through the drywall during the tour. Just straight up punctures it. The family's still planning to buy?" My cousin paused the TV and said, "That would be illegal here. That's not a wall, that's a decorative screen." He couldn't comprehend paying €500,000 for something you could accidentally damage while moving furniture. I tried explaining American construction standards, and he genuinely thought I was pranking him. I'm a building materials supplier in Rotterdam, and we got contacted by an American expat wanting to replicate his Texas home. He kept asking about vinyl siding, particle board subflooring, and hollow core interior doors. I gave him quotes using European equivalents, and he nearly fainted. He said, "Why does everything cost triple?" I had to explain that actual wood, proper insulation, and triple pane windows aren't considered luxury items here. They're legally mandated minimums. He ended up building anyway, but sent me photos later of his American friends visiting. They were knocking on walls going, "Wait, these don't move? What material is this?" "Solid brick, mate. It's called solid brick. My brother manages a hardware store in Prague, and this American student came in asking for supplies to soundproof his apartment. He said he could hear his neighbor's alarm clock through the wall. My brother asked him to describe the building, and the kid said it was new. Construction from 2018. My brother just stared at him and said, "That's impossible unless your wall is missing." Turns out the student was subletting in an illegally converted warehouse with drywall partitions. My brother had to explain that actual apartment buildings here have 20-centimeter concrete walls as standard. The kid said, "In America, that's luxury high-rise construction," my brother replied. "In Prague, that's the minimum legal requirement, or the building doesn't get occupancy permits." The student ended up moving because he couldn't comprehend paying rent for walls that actually block sound. I worked the front desk at a real estate office in Stockholm, and last year, I had an American investor who wanted to buy older properties to flip. He kept talking about his renovation timeline being 6 weeks start to finish. I showed him our renovation regulations and permit requirements. He looked at the documents and said, "This is insane. You need engineering approval to move a non-load-bearing wall?" I explained that all walls in Swedish buildings from before and 1990 are either load-bearing or contribute to fire safety ratings. He said, "That's over-regulation. In America, we just knock out whatever walls we want." I pulled up our building collapse statistics versus American ones. He went quiet for a minute, then asked, "So how do Americans just casually gut entire floors?" I had no answer because the concept is absolutely mental. From a European structural perspective, I'm a city inspector in Bordeaux, and we had an American architecture student intern last summer. Her first week, she watched me fail an inspection because the developer used single-pane windows. She said, "These look normal to me." I explained that single-pane hasn't been legal in France for new construction since the 1970s. We require triple-pane for energy efficiency. She said, "In Georgia, we still install single-pane all the time, especially in subdivisions." I asked her how residents heat and cool those homes. She said they just run AC constantly at massive cost. I showed her our energy consumption data, and she couldn't believe. French homes use 60% less climate control energy. She said Americans just accept $400 monthly utility bills as normal. I told her that would cause riots here. She spent her entire internship photographing window installations like they were exotic specimens. My uncle runs a construction company, and Brussels and got hired by an American expat family to renovate their townhouse. First meeting, the father said, "We want an open concept main floor. Just take down all these walls." My uncle explained those walls are structural supports for the floors above. The American said, "So install a beam." My uncle said, "Sure. But engineering calculations, permits, and a steel beam of that span would cost 45,000 euros. The American went pale and said, "That's more than my entire renovation budget in Dallas for twice the space." My uncle said, "Yes, because in Dallas your homes are made of wooden sticks and prayers. Here we build with materials that don't collapse." The family kept their original floor plan. The wife later told my uncle she visited friends in Ohio and was horrified that she could hear every word through walls. She said, "I thought that was just apartment buildings." My uncle said, "No, madame, that's American construction standards across the board. I'm a landlord in Porto and rented to an American graduate student last year." 3 months in, she requested a maintenance visit because she said the walls were unusually hard. I didn't understand the complaint, so I visited. She said, "I tried to hang a poster with a thumbtack and it wouldn't go in." I explained her walls are limestone block covered in plaster, standard for Portuguese buildings over 50 years old. She said, "So how do I hang things?" I showed her the proper masonry anchors and drill bits. She said, "This seems excessive for a poster." I said, "Welcome to living in buildings designed before planned obsolescence was invented." She ended up buying a standing photo display because drilling frightened her. Later, she mentioned her roommate in Boston used to punch holes in walls when angry and just spackle them before moving out. I said if someone did that here, they'd lose their entire security deposit, plus face property damage charges. She said, "For fixing holes you made yourself." I said, "For structurally compromising the wall, yes." Different universes entirely. My sister works maintenance at a holiday resort in Tuscany, and they get mostly American tourists each summer. Last July, a family requested an urgent room change because they claimed construction noise. My sister investigated and found nothing. The family insisted they could hear drilling through the walls. Turns out the neighbors were hanging pictures using proper masonry techniques. My sister explained Italian buildings use stone or concrete, not hollow walls. The American father said, "But I can hear them hammering." My sister said, "Yes, you'd hear a hammer anywhere, but you don't hear their conversations, television, or toilets, correct?" The family admitted that was true. The father said, "In our house in Florida, you hear everything." I assumed all buildings were like that, my sister said. American residential. Construction prioritizes speed and profit over permanence. They kept their room, but the mother spent the rest of vacation photographing wall thickness at various sites, like she was gathering evidence of some elaborate SPIRACY. I run a property management firm in Copenhagen and we rent to exchange students, including many Americans. Every semester without fail, Americans complain about the impossibility of mounting shelves or decorations. One student from Arizona tried using command strips on our textured plaster walls and was shocked when they failed. He said, "These work on every wall in America." I explained American walls are smooth drywall. Ours are rendered masonry. He said, "What's the point of walls you can't customize?" I said they last 300 years. Resist fire for 4 hours, block all sound, and maintain temperature, he said, "But I can't stick posters up." I wanted to explain the concept of priorities, but just gave him poster putty instead. He later told me his parents visited and his father kept touching the walls going. "These are legit solid," the kid said. Dad thought I was exaggerating when I said European buildings are different. His father apparently spent an hour researching American construction standards and became genuinely depressed. About his own home, my cousin manages vacation rentals in Barcelona and had an American family stay last month. They left a review complaining that the apartment was clearly industrial conversion because walls were unnecessarily thick. My cousin replied that the building dates to 1890 in all. Walls are original brick and stone construction standard for that era. The review was edited to add, "Walls are so thick you can't hear neighbors, but made hanging our kids' artwork impossible without power tools. Cousin said the family also complained about excessive window weight. Because our double casement windows have solid wood frames and triple glazing. The father apparently tried to open one single-handed like American vinyl windows and was shocked by the heft. My cousin explained these windows last 50 years minimum, while American vinyl windows warp and fail within 15, the mother responded. But ours are so easy to replace, my cousin said. Yes, because you have to replace them constantly. The family clearly didn't understand whether that was an insult or explanation. I work at a building supply warehouse in Dublin, and we occasionally get American contractors working on expat renovations. Last month, one asked for standard drywall sheets. I showed him our plasterboard, which is denser and fire-rated. He said, "This is way too heavy. Don't you have the normal stuff?" I explained this is normal for Ireland and EU standards. He said, "In Virginia, we use half this thickness." I said, "Yes, and your walls fail fire safety tests, while ours give residents 2 hours to escape," he said. American houses don't burn down that often. I pulled up comparative fire death statistics and he got uncomfortable. He said, "Those numbers must be wrong." Said, "Your building codes prioritize construction speed. Ours prioritize not killing people." He bought the heavy plasterboard, but kept muttering about European overregulation. Later, I saw his work truck, and the logo said Premium Quality Homes. The irony was apparently lost on him. I'm a tour guide in Bruges, and Americans always ask about our medieval buildings. Last week, a couple from Seattle asked how old structures are maintained. I explained many buildings from the 1400s still serve as homes or shops with minimal structural changes. The husband said that's impossible. Buildings don't last 600 years. I said yours don't because they're made of dimensional lumber and vinyl. Ours are stone, brick, and hardwood. The wife said, "But don't they get outdated?" I said, "We update interiors and systems, but the structure remains sound," the husband said. "In America, we just tear down and rebuild every 50 years. I said, "Yes. We've noticed your approach prioritizes developer profits over heritage or sustainability." They seemed offended, but I wasn't sure how else to explain that their normal is deeply abnormal by European standards. Later, the wife asked if our buildings were more expensive to maintain. One said per year yes, but divided across 600 years, the cost is actually lower than replacing American houses every 2 generations. My friend works construction in Amsterdam, and they hired an American project manager for a restoration job last year. His first day, he reviewed our timeline and said, 8 months for 3 floors seems excessive. My friend explained, "We're reinforcing foundations, replacing lead pipes, upgrading electrical while preserving original plaster moldings and wooden beams." The American said, "Just gut it and rebuild. You'd finish in 6 weeks, my friend said. "That's illegal for heritage buildings and structurally insane," the American said. "American contractors do full house flips in 3 weeks, my friend said. "Yes, and they're flipping particle board boxes, not 1750s canal houses with meter-thick walls." The American kept pushing his timeline until my friend showed him photos of a botched renovation where someone tried to rush work. The entire facade had separated from the interior structure. The American went quiet and said, "That would never pass inspection." My friend said, "Exactly. Which is why we have these timelines." The American lasted 3 weeks before requesting transfer back to Houston, where construction apparently makes sense to him. I'm a housing journalist in Vienna and interviewed American expats about their adjustment experiences. One woman from Phoenix said the hardest part was accepting housing quality differences. She said, "I toured an apartment advertised as affordable housing and the walls were solid concrete. The windows were triple paned, the doors were solid wood. In Arizona, that's luxury pricing." I asked what Americans consider normal. She said hollow walls, vinyl, everything. The cheapest materials legally allowed. She explained her $380,000 Phoenix house has paper-thin walls where she hears her neighbor's phone conversations. I asked why Americans tolerate this. She said, Most don't know anything else exists. When I tell friends here that us houses are basically temporary structures, they think I'm exaggerating. She showed me photos of her Arizona house and I could see the vinyl siding warping. She said that happened in 3 years. I noted that her Viennese apartment building is from 1885 and the facade is perfect. She said, "That's what breaks American minds. The idea that buildings can just last." My neighbor in Lyon is a construction engineer who recently visited family in North Carolina. He returned genuinely disturbed. He said, "I watched them build an entire subdivision in 4 weeks. Wooden frames, particle board, vinyl siding. They'll sell for $400,000 each." I asked if he toured any. He said he pushed on a wall and it flexed. He asked the builder about material specs, and the builder said, "It meets code." My neighbor said, "Your code is a crime against structural engineering." He showed me videos of the construction, and I couldn't believe homes were being sold for $500,000. He said Americans have normalized living in temporary structures and believing they're permanent. He spent 3 days researching American building failures and came to dinner with statistics about wall collapse, fire deaths, and sound pollution lawsuits. He said they've convinced themselves that paper walls and plastic windows are normal housing. I said Americans probably think our construction is overbuilt. He said they live in houses where you can hear your neighbor's toilet flush and think that's acceptable. It's not overbuilt, it's just actual buildings. Couldn't argue. When your benchmark is particle board, even basic quality seems excessive.